My name is Amy Andrews. I'm the business resourcing partner here at Jobs Go Public, and I've worked in recruitment for the past 17 years. So hopefully I'll be able to share some tips with you and go along a bit of a journey in terms of how to make your CV stand out, especially in sort of turbulent times. And there's obviously a lot of candidates looking for work. So trying to make yourself stand out in the competition. So I'll get cracking. There may be some other people join us along the way, but obviously those of you who are here, I just want to get started and try and help as much as I can. So as mentioned, my name's Amy Andrews, and the aim of today's session, excuse me, is to go through why CVs are important. To help you create a great CV, many questions I get over my time is how to create a great CV, how does it work, what's important, so that I'll go through that today, and also give you some ideas on what to include and also what not to include. So many different examples and areas to look at, so I'll give you some ideas of what to include in your CV. So why have a CV? So many reasons. It's the first impression really for an employer. That's the first thing they're going to get from a candidate when you've applied for an application, you've made an expression of interest for them. So it's their first impression of you. So you have to make sure that your CV stands out and it gives an impression of you, what your character like and who you are as a person, as an individual. It's also essential for your personal brand. They don't know you, they will never have met you before. So it's really important that you stand out on your CV and have all of the information that has some keywords in there as well. And also it can be the difference of having an interview or not. I'm going to some tips shortly, but also it's important that you do have some form of standout sort of capability on your CV, because candidates and managers want to interview candidates, but if you have some keywords missing on your CV, it could be the case that you miss out on an interview. And also it makes a good impression, and it's important in today's competitive job market. You'll have probably seen many different forms of application forms when you're applying for positions, from quick upload CV to full application questions, adding your CV into your capabilities. So it's really important that you do have make a good impression in today's working ways. So what makes a great CV? Well, it needs to be tailored to the job you're applying for. I think I'd be giving you bad advice if I said to have your CV one size fits all, because one person who's looking at your CV might completely be different to the next person who's looking. So it's really important that you tailor your CV to the job that you're applying for. And a little fact there for you, that managers or recruiters spent 6 to 8 CVs looking at each individual's candidate CV. So it's really important that you do highlight keywords, you match your CV to the job advert. It could be a client is looking for a certain system and they will search that system on your CV. It could be something to do with a program you've used. It could be something to do with analytics you've used or anything like that. So it's really important that you do tailor based on the application. And like I said, it incorporates keywords from the job advert into the description. So things like social value, it could be planning, it could be administration. If you have those key things in your CV, it can really help. And I always say that to recruiting managers when they're hiring staff, is to make sure that you've got keywords in your advert, in your job descriptions, that candidates, when they're looking for applications and looking for jobs to apply for, you can really have a look at the application and tailor your CV to make sure that you do have those skills, those keywords in there. And also keep it consistent, have a consistency with the font and the style. If you are in a creative space and you're a creative marketeer, it could be the case that you need to have all singing or dancing images, logos, art and crafts on that CV, but it's really important that you do keep with a certain style, with a font, and keep it really legible for people to read, to look at. And also it summarizes your skills and qualifications. Are you a lawyer? Are you an administrator? Do you have to have a certain payroll skills? It really summarizes your skills and qualifications for that job, which is really helpful, especially when you're a manager looking for candidates, to really look at those CVs and really get to grips with that candidate. And so what to include? So there's so many things you can include, and I'm going to try and keep it short, really. Contact details, keep it short. Name, ideally a location of where you are, but you don't have to fill in your full address. LinkedIn, maybe profile you want to put in there. Also contact number and email address. Please make sure that your contact number and email address are correct. I have seen it time and time again where I've had a really good CV in front of me and a digit could be wrong. So it's really important that you do have that in there. And also a profile. So yeah, some skills. So a bit of an overview of who you are, what your skills and experience are. And when you're talking about your work experience, it's important that you do to the most recent first. So your current job, how long you've worked there, who the organisation is, some really key achievements in terms of what you've done and who you've worked for, the things that you've made. So not necessarily things about what your job entails, but the achievements that you've done before. Have you saved an organisation a lot of money? Have you doubled the performance of a team? Have you got 100 words per minute on your typing? It could be lots of different things that you have there to really set yourself apart from other candidates moving forward. And also your education. So have you got a qualification that's going to help you get your role? Is it a payroll qualification? Is it CIPD qualification that you have? So really keep it specific to this particular job. I can't stress that enough. I know it can be really difficult when you're applying for maybe 3 or 4 jobs a week, even more, to tailor your CV, but it does really help if you are specific in terms of the jobs that you are applying for when you're adding information to your CV. And when it comes to further down your career years ago, if that job is not relevant, then don't add details to what that job entailed. For example, I worked in the co-op many years ago when I was at uni. I will have that on my CV as where I've worked, but I haven't gone into detail to save some space for the rest of my career to ensure that we have there. And also interests and references, only if it's relevant. You don't need to share that you are a keen horse rider unless it's relevant to that job. So only if it's relevant. And in terms of references, make sure that if you are putting references on your CV, that you do ask the person's permission before you give out reference details, so that you can give that person a referee, because somebody doesn't want to be contacted about you if they don't know. So only if it's relevant. If it's important because somebody's asked for information about your references up front, add it. If they haven't, then just wait until the end of the application process to provide those details. I've just seen a Q&A in the notification box there for you. Yes, we will be sharing the presentation slides, so you'll have all of this information at the end of the session. So some do's and don'ts for you. So do include in career gaps. I think it's really important that you don't shy away from having a gap in your CV, whatever reason. It could be because you have decided to renovate your house. It could be the case that you've been looking work for a certain period of time. It could be you've been a student. It's really important to include those gaps. Say how long you've been on a gap for, and also why, what was the reason for that gap, because it shows to a manager or a person who's looking at and reviewing your CV that you actually are conscientious about that gap, and also that you're happy to talk about it. Obviously, if there was some personal reasons that you didn't want to go into, you could just put in their personal reasons just to show that there is a reason why you have been out of work for whatever particular reason. And that's obviously something that you may need to address when you're going for an interview to actually discuss the gaps that you have. But don't shy away from it. Don't be embarrassed. Make sure that you put that on there. It could be the case you've been on paternity leave or maternity. It could be for all sorts of reasons, but do make sure that you do put that on your CV. And keep it concise as you can. I think gone are the days where CVs have to be 2 pages. They don't have to be 2 pages. They can be longer. I think if it's relevant to your job and what you're doing right now, then it's really important that you do keep that information on there. But obviously, if it was maybe 10, 15 years ago, is it relevant to your job market now? Is it relevant for what you're doing? You have to sort of make an adjustment, because like I said, people spend very short amount of times looking at each person's CV. So it is important that you do tailor it to some specific jobs. And I can't stress that enough. And I do feel like I'm banging on about that point, but it is really important. If a client is looking for someone who's got an iTrent system, who's a HR business partner, they're the things that they're going to be looking for. If they've done job evaluations, an administrator could be looking for someone who's got customer services experience, could be reception. You might have covered something on that job description, and if it's not on there, then the manager won't know to highlight you as a shortlisted candidate. And also keep a simple format. Like I've mentioned earlier, if you don't need all singing and dancing, artwork or information like that, it's really important to keep it clear, keep it simple, because if you have too many graphics on there, it can deter someone's eye from the information that you want to relay on your CV. And some don'ts there. When I say don't share personal information, obviously name and telephone number and email address is really important, but you don't want to go into too much details in terms of how many cats you've got or how many children you have. You don't need to share that information. A lot of recruitment processes now, they use blind recruitment processes. So personal information sometimes needs to be taken off your CV. You don't want to share too much information that they can work out who you are and share that information. And also jargon. It's really important that the people who may be reviewing your application may not be the specialists. If you're looking at organisations and maybe the HR team are shortlisting candidates on behalf of managers, or it could be the case that managers are looking for some assistance with their areas, for example, a recruiter, we are not the specialists in any given job. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a finance manager. I don't know the jargon of certain technical terms that may be used in that area. You need to make sure that your CV is clear for anybody to read, because someone who's shortlisting your CV might not know who what the certain jargon is for that organisation. So don't add jargon, yes, but don't add too much of it, because you need to make sure that your CV is legible. And also photos and images. If you don't need to have them because you're not, for example, marketing or creative, then I would remove them straight away from your CV. And like I said previously, don't include too much information on junior roles that you may have done in the past, because it deters from the present and you haven't got that much information to have or share on your CV. So you want to make sure that the information that you're providing is up to date, it's clear, and relevant to your role. Now, there may be some of you on the call today, and I have been asked this question quite a lot in terms of how to put together a CV if you have very limited experience. I've recently worked with my niece and my nephew who are doing their GCSEs and A-levels, and they're looking for their first job. So obviously they have no experience. They've got no work experience whatsoever. They're looking for their first job and they found it really difficult because they don't have the skills or the knowledge. And it's helpful for them that they have an auntie who can help them and support them in the way. So in terms of CVs without experience, use your soft skills. And when I mean by soft skills, I mean your communication, your teamwork, your problem solving skills. And there's many other soft skills you can look at. For example, I suggested to my niece, she looks at the experience that she's had working in teams and leading people in a certain project for her university. So these are things that you will do day to day. You will have communication, you will have dealt in teams, whether it being at school, college, university, working with friends to organise events. It could be problem solving because you have had to deal with various different problems. These are sort of skills that you really want to showcase in your CV where you haven't got necessarily any work experience, which tends to happen if you are, for example, a student and you're straight out of school. Also, key achievements. Key achievements is really important. It's things that you've achieved at. It's things like being a captain of a team, being a school lead, championing something within your school. It could be within college, something that you've organised. It could have been a charity event. It could have been raising money for a certain charity or something that you've organised. These are all achievements that you can show. It could be getting your degree, passing your GCSEs. lots of different achievements that you can use for school leavers, for example, to show that you're organised, you're committed, and you want to really do a good job. And also highlight your education and relevant coursework. I think this is a big thing for students. They as my personal experience anyway, when my niece and nephew sent me their CVs, they highlighted their education, but they didn't really go into depths of the things that they've learned. So, for example, my niece had done a project where she'd ran an event for the school. She hadn't highlighted what she's done or what she's learnt. And I think people and candidates who have got limited experience, it's really important to showcase your skills and ability. And I think what people tend to do is just put the basics of what their experience are and trying to work with that way. But actually, it's really important to be relevant and think, actually, this is what I've done and this is what I've achieved and this is what the outcome is. And we talk about analysis of our CVs. It's about what you did, what the end product was, and what you learned. And I think that's really relevant and resonates with me for a candidate who has limited experience. And obviously relevant coursework. So if you are looking to further a career in finance or business, then it's all relevant to put your modules in there, what modules you've done, what you've learned, and how that has affected you as a person. And lots of different experiences that you can include. No experience is useless on a CV. I think it's really important, which I keep saying, volunteer work experience, whether you've done a 2-week work experience at school, what were your duties there? What did you learn? What did you overcome? It could be volunteering at a Cubs or the Trussell Trust, or any sort of volunteer work you've done, working in a family's business. That's all relevant work experience that you have. And things like clubs and sports. I know when I've hired people to work in recruitment, people have come straight out of university. If they've had clubs and sports, it's been really appealing to me because they work as a team. And they work as a team. It's really important for them to show that they can work, yes, individually, but also sharing that experience of working together within a club, what you've organised, who you've organised, what events you've done, and what has been the outcome. I think that's really important to show what the project was, what the area was, and how you can really build on your experience. And again, it's things like adding your contact details on there, what school, your aspirations, your career aspirations. And also, like I mentioned previously, if you are going to put references on your CV, make sure that your references are people who know to be contacted in the case of a reference, because you don't want to have that situation where someone may have forgotten about you or may not have. I'm sure students will put down their head of year. It can be really difficult to keep on top. So do make sure that you ask that person before you put down their name as a reference. And LinkedIn is another powerful tool. I'm sure many of you will already have LinkedIn. I've got a few tips for you to use it. LinkedIn is something to be used with your CV. Find the perfect photo. Make sure that you don't have 15 other people in your profile picture. Things like it should be just a perfect picture of you. It should be professional. It shouldn't be anything too creative unless you're in that space. It should be something about you, shows who you are, but not maybe have I don't know, I wouldn't have had a drink in your hand or be on a beach in a swim costume or anything like that. It needs to be a professional photo. And I'd always say, if there's anybody in that picture, then have a separate picture of yourself. And choose keywords in your headline. So things like, are you a CIPD? Do you have relevant exam qualifications that you need to have? Is there something that you want to have that really resonates with you? And also include a personal statement, an overview, just like on your CV, an overview of what you are, what your career aspirations are, and also information about what you're looking to achieve and what you've accomplished over your career. And obviously your work experience. So go back from most recent to older and really share that information about what you're doing, what you've achieved, what your key achievements are within that organisation, to really showcase your skills. Another tool I would suggest on LinkedIn is using recommendations. So those of you who don't know, on LinkedIn, you can Ask colleagues, managers, and people that you know to write recommendations on you. So it's really helpful. It's like a reference check of you to show on LinkedIn. So I regularly get requested to do recommendations, and if I work someone and they've done a really, really good job, I'll always give them a positive recommendation, and vice versa. So if I give one to someone, they will give it to me. Obviously, make sure it's relevant for the work experience rather than just asking your family and friends to recommend you. But it is a really good tool to show that you are keeping your profile up to date. You've got recent recommendations, and it allows you to have that information online. And things like share successes. There's lots of people on LinkedIn who use it as a tool to find their next job. LinkedIn doesn't have to always be positive. If someone is struggling within their market, looking for advice, I often put posts on LinkedIn looking for suggestions and polls. It's really important to get engagement. You have to use it as a network. It's a networking tool to enable you to showcase your skills, showcase what you can do, and really push forward your brand, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to sell yourself in a professional capacity. So share successes, share challenges. Some people have really bad days. It's important to deal with the rough and the smooth. So I think it's really important that you do use that, to use it to your benefit, to network with people, connect with people, share stories, comment, make sure that you're active on LinkedIn, because the more active you are, the more views you will get and the more likelihood of people are going to be engaging with you. So when you do see a job that you want to apply for, it's all relevant to that area. And join groups and write articles. Up until a couple of years ago, I'd never wrote an article. I'd been very quiet on groups that I was in, but it's really helped me to engage with new people, meet new people along the way. I went to an event a couple of weeks ago, and lots of people were asking for me for my LinkedIn profile. So if you're going to maybe job fairs, maybe graduate fairs, and you're meeting people, do try and connect on LinkedIn, because it is important of sharing experiences and getting to know people. And share information about what you care for and what your passions are, and make sure that if you are looking to work for particular organizations, that you follow those groups on LinkedIn, because that's the first place that people are going to post when they're looking to hire new staff and move forward. I will just like to say thank you very much for joining me today. If anybody does have any questions, then please do put them on the Q&A. I've got a couple of questions in terms of hints and tips. Yes, we will have the hints and tips up at the end of the session, and they will be sent out to you via email, and the session will be recorded. I've also got another question from another candidate in terms of how many years of employment do you give on a CV? Last 10 years. It really depends. What I would say, it really depends. You don't have to keep your CV to 2 pages if that's what you're worried about. If a CV is 3 pages, then it will still get looked at. And it's important that you do have your experience on. Now, some employers do want experience and have their CVs filled out back to education, which I know is, for some people, can be quite exhaustive lists. I would say if it's relevant to your career, for example, your career has been 10 years, then do put 10 years. If it's not relevant to the job that you are applying for, then maybe just put the name of the organization that you've worked for and how long you have worked there for. It really does depend. And if you've got any specific questions with the application process that you're applying for a particular job, then maybe just reach out to that organization and find out if it's just the case that they're looking for a CV. I find a lot of our clients that we work with have telephone numbers of people to speak to when they are looking to make hires. So call up, don't be afraid to call and have a chat, because that might make you stand out on your CV. But it really does depend on how long your career has been, and also if it's relevant to that job. So I'd say maybe 10 years, maybe 15, depending on your experience. But if it's not relevant, then don't include it. Just say that where you were working. Is there any other questions at all from the participants? I'm happy to stick along for the next 4 minutes for this webinar to answer the questions. If not, then please do, if you do have any questions and you don't want to ask them now, then please do feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. But I'd like to thank you so much for your time today, so much for joining me. I hope you found it helpful. Happy to take on any feedback from you. And oh, we've got another questions. Yes, you'll be getting the slides via email. You will get copies of those. They will be sent out at some point. If not today, within the next couple of days, you'll have that all to you. But I'd just like to say again, thank you so much for your time. Have a great day. I wish you all the very success in putting your CVs together. And if you have any questions, then do please reach out to me. Thank you very much for coming, guys. Take care.